Flat rail chassis and a power wagon body is pretty much the equivalent of a yoga pant, Ugg boot, pumpkin spice latte version of an RC car, but here's what we got. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Flip That Truck. This is truck number 2 in season 2 of Flip That Truck. And in this series, basically what we do is we start with an inexpensive RC, try and do some modifications, clean up, fix up, sell up to try and work our way to a rig that in the end, I think is something that I would like to keep on my shelf. Now, the very first truck that we had in this series was a VS410 on a set of Capra portal axles with a Vanquish Origin half cab body. Now, what we've got next is the vehicle that I actually traded for that vehicle. I was contacted by a person who was interested in the previous truck that we had, and he had this truck that he was looking to trade against it. Now, we came to an agreement with taking some parts on and off and trying to work with and get to down where we are here. This truck came to me basically like you see it here. Did have to add a couple little things, but it also has a new Power Wagon clear unpainted body. This one we pulled out of the bag, so it's new. I just started doing the very basics of trimming to it. We obviously have a long ways to go before it's going to sit on this chassis. Now, I don't know a whole lot about this particular chassis. It doesn't have any markings on it or anything like that to really give me 100% clue exactly what it is. The previous owner had only had it for a couple of weeks. He had a couple of ideas of what he thought it was, but I haven't been able to confirm that myself. It does appear to be like a G10 or a fiberglass style chassis, and it is just a flat rail chassis. Flat rail chassis are not something that I typically normally would run myself. They're just not something I really like. I don't think they're very scale, and they're just in general pretty plain chassis. This one pretty much still fits in that. They are good performing chassis in general usually, just because there isn't much to them. And really the reason that they're popular is because they're so easy and cheap to produce. Now this one is a little bit different in a few ways. This one is based off of a Traxxas TRX4 Sport. So it's got the Traxxas TRX4 Sport axles on it. And this one appears to have some RC Samix front knuckles and C-hubs in brass. Now these are a painted version, so you don't have to look at the brass as much. And that also has what looks like some beef patties behind those front Vanquish machete wheels. Those machete wheels have a set of Voodoo KLRs mounted up to them. The tires themselves feel nice and sticky, but I can't tell what the compound is. There's no dots left over for me to figure out what compound these came in, either the red or the gold or whatever other colors are available. I have owned a set of the blues before, and this definitely doesn't feel like those. These definitely feel much softer than the blue compound, so I'm guessing red or gold. Now, along with the TRX4 Sport portal axles, it also has the TRX4 center transmission and skid plate, which is nice because it does give you a forward-mounted motor. Mounted up to that TRX4 transmission is a Tekin 35-turn brushed motor. Now, I can't tell if it's the hand wound or machine wound, but we also have paired with it the Tekin FXR ESC. Nice compact setup. Wiring on this thing looks pretty decent overall. It does have a TRX battery plug, which is definitely gonna have to go. I'll swap that thing out to either probably an XT60. I think everybody should be forced to go to XT60. It's just the best battery connector there is. But either way, we definitely have to get rid of that TRX plug. Now, that ESC is mounted to a Delrin plate, and this plate is actually the Crawler Innovations Delrin plate that they make for the TRX4s. You can get this nice little plate from them. It bolts right into the chassis over top of the servo mount, gives you just a nice area to mount either a servo winch or a battery, electronics, all of these different areas to just allow you to mount things. And this one is using the TRX4 front cross member, so this thing still bolts right in, and it really just gave a nice place to mount all of these extra electronics, including this Castle 10 amp BEC that's in there. That BEC is pushing the Savox servo, and I believe this is a 1230 SG. So that servo will have some decent power. But finally, connecting the chassis to those axles is a set of TRX4 shocks, just kind of go-to stock shocks. These things always perform pretty well. They're nice and smooth, and these appear to all still have oil in them. For the most part, this chassis seems to be set up pretty well with one major exception, and that is the panhard mount. This thing has what is the remainder of the TRX4 panhard mount, which is just a plastic piece, which has been trimmed off of the original shock tower that kind of had it integrated in, and it's screwed into the chassis. However, it's only screwed in with one screw, so it actually can all rotate. This is another common issue with flat rail chassis like this, is that oftentimes they're not engineered to have all of the things that you actually need, including something like a panhard mount. So we're gonna have to come up with something that's better than what we see here. I definitely want something rigid, not something 3D printed. A 3D printed part is not a part I would want to use in that type of high stress area. So we're gonna have to come up with something. And in the last episode, which was the first episode of this season, we did say that we were going to work on some actual metal fabrication on every truck this season. So that could be one item that we'd look at completing. And while I think that is an area that could use a little bit of attention, the other thing is that this truck doesn't have any bumpers front and rear. So it seems like a bumper could be a good option to fabricate as well. And then we also are looking at a power wagon body. The power wagon body is just kind of like the body you see everybody use on these style of trucks because they have such high clearance nose design to the body, so it makes it so easy to clear everything. I joked in the intro that this is a very basic truck. In general, this is just a style of build that you see a lot of people go to when they're aiming at performance only, not really caring as much about style. Flat rail chassis, power wagon body, very minimal bed on the back. We have the uncut power wagon rear bed here. Definitely gonna have to do something with getting that all trimmed up and mated to the front cab and just kind of go with the flow of what a lot of people like to see with this style of build. So hopefully by the end, this truck will fit right in with that look. I was told that this truck also has both underdrive and overdrive. So pretty clear that whoever was trying to put this together was definitely aiming for a very competitive and capable vehicle in the end. So my goals for this truck are going to be get the power wagon body mounted super low, just as low as possible up here, giving just enough room for battery clearance and just to get that super aggressive look. We're gonna get that put on, then we're going to mate the bed to it, trying to flow with that same aggressive slammed look. Once we get the body sitting as low as possible, we'll trim the sides to whatever height it needs to be to make sure that it sits towards the bottom of this chassis. One thing that definitely needs to be done is coming up with some sort of slider for this truck. I think what we might look at doing is adding something like the VS410 Origin, just generic rock slider bases and outer sliders, because those work really well with the width of a power wagon body. So that may make it super easy for us to get that added, give ourselves a nice transition across the side here. The big thing I can't decide on is the fabrication side though. Like I said, it doesn't have front or rear bumpers. It needs a panhard mount. But at the same time, I'm kind of thinking that just a very simple, cage or hoop in the back would just add to the styling more than anything and maybe make the biggest impact with a very similar amount of work. So maybe we decide to leave the bumpers off and let whoever picks this up decide what bumpers they want to pick up and run on this. And instead, we'll add something in the bed to make it look a little bit more stylish. And when I say bed, by the end of this thing is going to be, almost nothing left. Probably cut out the entire center, just leave some very minimal bed sides that are cut pretty short to just maximize a departure angle. And then we get to that other sticking point, of course, which is paint. This body is clear currently, so I either decide to leave it for whatever the future owner decides he or she wants to paint this truck, or I make a decision and do a poor job at it. But now let's get into the dollars and cents and statistics of where we're sitting currently. So the last truck in this series we sold for $475, minus the trade-in value of this, which, as you see it here, with wheels, tires, the body, and everything here, we're sitting at about $320, which leaves us still with $155 of surplus left from the last truck if we need to dump it into this one. That catches you up on the bank. Now let's get into that grading system that I put together. Allows you to compare the current vehicle to any of the past vehicles that we've covered in this series. The first category is quality. Now overall, I think we've got some decent quality stuff. The Traxxas axles themselves have always stood up pretty well. We've got some upgraded parts, we're told, inside of there. We also have the Samix Knuckles C-hubs on there. We also have some beef patties and some Vanquish Machete wheels, Voodoo KLR tires, decent electronics overall. So quality on this thing, not bad. Of course, it is just a simple flat rail chassis, so I think that'll knock us down just a little bit, and we'll say that this is about a 6 out of 10. Next, we move into age and generation. Now, the TRX4 axles are still fairly new. I can't find exactly this chassis anywhere right now, so I'm not sure if it's an older chassis or not, but in general, the flat rail chassis are kind of going to be the same throughout the generations, other than maybe just some simple geometry changing. So we can't knock it down too much for that at the same time. But I think 7 out of 10 is still pretty fair for this truck. Next, we get to finish. Now, this truck is still kind of fairly unfinished, fairly rough, no bumpers, the panhard mount not complete, just kind of sitting on there. And, you know, we have no sliders. Body mounting, it's got some of like the old axial style screw-on body mounts in there, but obviously it's got a brand new body, so none of that's configured, but can't knock it too much since the value of a brand new body is nice to add. But it's still not really all that polished yet. So the finish, I think we're just gonna have to go with a 6 out of 10. Next, durability and practicality. Durability wise, TRX4 axles, pretty durable. Upper portal gear is kind of the main thing that there is sometimes issues with. I'm told that we have upgraded machine gears in here, which that's a bonus, but other than that, I'm going to assume that we've got the sintered gears in the portal boxes still. Now, while Savox servos aren't something that I necessarily like to run, I think that we can all say that the 1230 is going to give us a decent amount of durability and practicality still, especially with a build aimed at something like we see here. Now, being that this doesn't have a large battery tray, it's going to force you to run a small, competitively sized battery pack in the front area, or we'd have to mount something back on the sliders that we will eventually install, but currently nothing there. So, no bumpers again. Just some of that stuff is going to have to knock this down until it's finished. So while I think the durability side of it is going to be fairly high, the practicality side is definitely where things are going to fall. So in the current state that we see it, I think we're going to have to say about a 5. Then we get to resale, and resale, being that it's in the unfinished state that it is, that's where it keeps things low. If projects aren't finished, they're usually just not worth nearly as much. And that's kind of how I capitalized off of what is in general a fairly nice pile of parts here. So that's why I was able to get this thing at a little bit of a deal, I feel. And I think that in the end, we're going to end up with something decent. But currently, as it sits, about a 6 out of 10. So I think that's going to put us at a fairly low score to start, but that's what I expect out of this. I knew that this was an unfinished project. I knew where most of the things on this truck sat, so I expected pretty much everything that we see here. And that's why I think that oftentimes buying trucks like this is a good way to go, just because you can get a lot for your money when it's not in one finished picture. I'm really looking forward to taking this Power Wagon body and getting it slammed way down onto this chassis. Being able to take it and lower it 1.5 inches, 2 inches from just sitting on top of the frame to just way down onto it makes these things look pretty good. It's an aggressive look, and I know why it's so popular, because it does look good. And I think that in the end, this truck will match that. Minus paint. It will either not get painted or it will not have a good looking paint job. So this build, I definitely expect to have maybe at least 2 update videos on before it's ready to leave. I don't think that I'll be able to get everything done on this build in one sitting, especially if I decide to do some sort of bed area cage rather than just doing something simple like a bumper or something along those lines. You have to let me know what your vote is as far as what items we should be fabricating. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm not looking to dump that much time into fabricating on something like this. I'm just looking to try and keep it and just narrow down a simple target, get that completed, and move on. So drop what your preferences would be in the comments below. Maybe I can kind of judge which way that will go based on what people would like to see the most. But that's gonna do it for the introduction to Truck 2 on Season 2 of Flip That Truck. I appreciate you guys watching. This is a fun series, one that I'm definitely looking forward to, as this season and seasons in the future progress as well. As always, thanks for watching. Hit the like button before you leave. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.